Welcome to the Get It Done podcast. I'm your host, Jimi Ryan. Today we have Megan Anderson. She is the VP of Marketing at MBS Highway. She is the host of Behind the Breakthrough podcast. And she has this new series on Instagram and Facebook. It's called Megs Mugs, where she reviews coffee mugs of different mortgage companies and influences in our space. Megan, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Hey, for sure. So a lot I want to get into, but I want to just quick touch base on, look, you have your hand in a lot of different things. Did I miss anything? I mean, you know, VP of Marketing with MBS Highway, that's huge. Behind the Breakthrough, huge. I'm a fan and a huge supporter of it. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it all. I think you got it all covered.
Sounds good. Well, Megs Mugs, I want to just quick talk about it for a minute because I just saw that you reviewed Amplify the mugs there. They don't break when you push them over the edge. Why are you doing the Megs Mugs series, and why do you like it so much? Why are you having fun with it?
So the reason that I started Megs Mugs was I just needed content that I thought would be fun and that my audience would engage with. And my target audience is loan originators and real estate agents, especially being at MBS Highway. That is, who we're targeting. And I thought it would just be a fun series. And we aren't really able to promote our corporate accounts through MBS Highway on our platform because it kind of, starts a whole thing. So I thought it would be fun to use my platform to showcase the different corporate accounts and relationships that we've built throughout the years.
Yeah, super cool. Are these your personal relationships, or are they more so like a family of people's relationships, or I guess why do it?
Yeah, so they're part of the MBS Highway family. And other than that, it's just connections that I made through the space. You brought up Renee Rodriguez and Amplify. That Amplify event basically changed my life. It changed the way I communicate with people, changed the way I communicate online. And so it's just a culmination of different people that I've met throughout the years being in this space.
Boy, me too. In regards, especially with Amplify, changed my life. I mean, the guy gets up to you and says, "Hey, Jimmy." Everybody does that. That's like weak sauce, basically. And then like you totally change yourself. I know everybody that has gone to it has gone there. And actually, I want to get into your Amplify story in a minute. But before we do, I want to set us up. So the Get It Done podcast really is all about the come up story. We use Elon Musk as an example. He has a story from making $1 million a year to $1 billion and then being the richest person in the world. And that's all great, awesome. But what I'm really looking for is the come up story, the 0 to $1 million story. And Megan, people see you in the spotlight doing this and that, but is that the truest you? And who were you before you really broke through everything? So best place to start that is, where were you born? How did you start your life? What were your parents like? What was childhood like for you?
So I was born in Denver, Colorado. When I was really young, we moved to Cody, Wyoming, which is where I remember being raised. And my parents were hardworking, middle-class individuals. My mom was actually the VP of the bank there, so she actually originates as well. And my dad was a builder back in the day. So I feel like I have been part of this space for as long as I can remember, and somehow it just kind of follows you. I had no intentions of going into the mortgage space, but once I graduated high school, I went off to college. And during college, I thought it would be fun to be a personal trainer during college. And so I started working at a gym. I got certified, and that was great. Then I started competing in bodybuilding shows with my boyfriend at the time. And we started taking on more and more clients, and we kind of branched off from working at the local gym to starting our own coaching platform. So I did that for a number of years. And after I graduated college, broke up with that boyfriend, then I decided to spur of the moment, just randomly decide to move to Vegas, where I lived with someone that I didn't really know for a while. And that kind of turned out to be a nightmare. But at that time, when I left the coaching platform that I was doing with my ex, then I started doing my own coaching platform. And during the time of building that business, I was also taking on extra work. And in Vegas, it's really easy to take on extra work. They always have all these conventions that you can kind of just work. And so I was working mastermind. This was like 5 years ago now. And that's kind of where I met everyone. That's where I met Barry Habib, but everyone in this industry. So that's going. I'm trying to figure out what is it that I want to do with my life. Also, at the time, I'm going through disordered eating and I'm falling out of love with what it is that I'm doing, thinking that I'm just helping people create eating disorders and disordered eating within themselves. So I kind of fall out of love with what I was doing. I went back to school for eating psychology at the time. And then I also started working at MBS Highway around the same time. And I started off in sales, just doing part-time sales and events. And then all of a sudden, I just decided to make the full-time shift into working MBS Highway. And, there was a time period in the beginning where I don't know if I would call it depressed, but I was kind of down at the fact of, what is it that I want to do with my life? Because I went from living where I felt like I had purpose and a passion to suddenly not knowing what my purpose and passion was. And those days were really hard, but you have your day in, day out tasks that you have to accomplish. And so I just started accomplishing them. And little did I know that all of those tasks were helping me for the next part of my life. During that time period where I was working sales, I got over my fear of talking on the phone. It became easier to communicate with people. I started hosting webinars, walkthroughs of MBS Highway, and getting comfortable talking to large groups. And then all of a sudden, I realized that the mortgage industry is still, in my eyes, still somewhat behind, especially when it comes to social media, building your brand and your business online. And I started to notice that these individuals felt the same way that my coaching clients did back in the day, unconfident in themselves, unsure of themselves, and it was stopping them from taking action. And so all of a sudden, I felt so good because I realized my purpose and my passion has never changed. It just shifted gears. And so I really love to tell this story because anyone that's feeling kind of like you're just going to work for the paycheck or you're not really passionate about it, well, stop for a second and take a look at all the tasks that you do in your day. And what are the ones that you enjoy doing? And how can you create more of that in your life? And so once I found this little area, this little niche that I could put myself in, well, I started taking on more tasks that weren't even, technically in my job title. I started opening up a Facebook users group for our users so that we could communicate with them that way. We started growing our online presence. We started hosting Facebook Lives. I started talking about social media. And thank goodness for Barry. Barry has been an extremely important part in the growth of my story. He was constantly pushing me. He still does. But I remember at the beginning, he was constantly pushing me to speak. I'd travel at events and he would be like, Megan, you're going up on stage. You're going to introduce me and you can talk for like 5 minutes. And I would get so nervous. I remember one time I was wearing my Apple Watch and I get up and you know how the Apple Watch tells you your heart rate? Well, I'm about to speak, 2 minutes away from it. And my Apple Watch starts dinging that my heart rate is too high. I'm like, oh my gosh. So what did I do? Well, I started the audience off with some deep breaths, allowed myself to come together, and then gave an awesome presentation. But it has definitely been a journey. It's been a story.
Boy, so many places I could go with that. Thanks for all of that. I already have a page of notes already of places we could go. First, I want to talk about Barry for just a minute. So Barry, I asked him actually this question is that 10 years from now, where are you going to be? And do you think you're ever going to retire? And he told me this flat out and made me think afterwards, like, Jimmy, no, I'm not going to retire because I feel like I don't even work. I do what I love to do every day. And to pivot off of what you're saying, like, look, I got to this point in my life where, I was lacking purpose and passion. I was just kind of going through the motions, and doing and just like working for a paycheck basically. And I really love that because, you know, you took on kind of, I don't know, you kind of created the whole thing. You created the Facebook groups. You did things that weren't necessarily comfortable or you weren't really given permission for, and you just did it. And look, you know how badly Barry needs you on social. I mean, you were on a Facebook Live the other day, and I watched it. It's like, hey Barry, you might want to turn off the live. Like right at the end of it, he just keeps on going, and it's just having an after recording conversation, and it's just like, hey Barry, come on, like it's been a minute, you should probably do. But gosh, there's so many places I want to go with this. Speak to this piece though. So you were doing something you didn't necessarily like to do. Did you know, because I think that this is really inspiring and encouraging other people that want to follow in your shoes, is did you know what you were doing wasn't really that great? And how did you attach like that coaching purpose, help people, get the fulfillment and do, the fire tasks, the joy tasks? How did you end up, I guess, bridging that gap and getting to the other side of it?
Well, it was always problems that you all of a sudden had to come up with a solution for. So I had no idea that I was going to end up where I'm at today. Originally I was just taking it on, trying to make some sales here and there. And during the process of calling these people, talking to these people about the platform, different things would come up. Like they would say, on MBS Highway, we have a lot of tools. We are kind of like an umbrella for every single tool that you could imagine that you would want during the mortgage process. And I noticed that when I was giving my webinars trying to sell these individuals, they were like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea MBS Highway had all these tools. And so that just sparked in my mind, we need to educate these people on what's happening. And I did get in trouble with sending out some mass emails for a while. And so then to kind of fix that problem, that's kind of why I started the Facebook users group, because I wanted a place where people could come together, they could share their wins on MBS Highway, and also where we could come in and educate them on, an update to a tool or a new tool that came out or what have you. We just needed a place to be able to share that quickly with massive amounts of people. And so that's really where that Facebook part kind of started. And then as far as, our social media and everything like that, we needed to be more consistent, and we definitely needed some help in that area. So
you pretty much just did it. You just ripped off the band and you decided, hey, I'm going to just do it. Yeah,
I just did it. And during the time when I didn't really know what I was doing and I did lack purpose, I just kind of knew that I had to get those certain tasks done, those sales calls, the cold calls, the follow-up calls. But it was in those monotonous tasks that I found what my purpose was. It was, the client that I would talk to them and they would be like, I've really been meaning to do social media. What tools do you have for that? How can you help me? And then I would just start talking to them, helping them overcome their fear, helping them overcome their challenges. And that's really where I kind of saw that I could hone in on my niche. And then it just kind of blew up from there.
That's awesome. I want to go back to, you mentioned that your dad was a builder, mom was a VP at a bank, and you kind of grew up in the industry. A lot of people fall into mortgage. They don't grow up being a little boy and girl and say, hey, I want to get into a mortgage, unless their parents are in it, and that's really rare even too. A lot of the kids are like, I would never do what they do.
That was where I was at.
well, right. And plus here, you're in Florida now, but you're in Wyoming. And I mean, it seems to me like more of, I don't know, not flashy, like kind of like a more, I guess, I don't know, small town type of a thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Cody, Wyoming is a huge town. And
Kanye did move there now, so it's growing. It's an interesting place now, but it was very much a tourist town, completely dead until summer hit. And then there would be thousands upon thousands of people because we were right outside the east entrance of Yellowstone. So it wasn't a really interesting place to grow up.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. And then being VP of a bank and a builder there, I'm sure it wasn't like massive amounts of people, massive amounts of like building going on, and I'm sure it was just like a couple small businesses and loan officer type stuff, but more on a small scale. It doesn't surprise me that you wouldn't want to do it. And Kanye is there now. Is that the place where he has this 4,000 acre ranch or whatever it is?
Yep. He has his Yeezy production out there now.
Well, that's just great. I want to move to coaching and bodybuilding. And look, I've listened to your Amplify story. I mean, you can't listen to an Amplify story first off and not tear up. So just full disclosure out there, everybody tears up when they do this. And you talk a lot about, being a coach and being a fitness coach. I didn't know the pieces of like, hey, I moved to Vegas, and it was with an ex dude, and it was a nightmare. Your process of that, was that all part of your story? What happened to you at this particular point in your life? How far did you go, and how did you come back?
Well, as far as the competitive aspect, I was getting ready to step on stage to potentially get my pro card. So at this point in time, I had probably done like 12 different shows, but I really wanted my pro card. And it was it's a weird industry to be in when you're a personal trainer, because it's kind of like your body sells your product. People want to work with you because they look at you and they're like, she looks great, I want to look like that. Or they see that you've placed top 4 every competition that you've ever done, so they want to kind of follow in those footsteps. But really, the major turning point with me there is I went out to Oregon to watch 2 of my girls compete in a show. And we were sitting around, and I used to teach my clients the concept of if it fits your macros. So you get an allotment of protein, fats, carbohydrates. You get an allotment of those every day, and you can eat whatever you want. You just have to weigh your food and stay within these allotments that you get. And I will say, even to this day, I do think if you are going to go in a caloric deficit and diet, that is kind of a better way to go, because regardless, when you're dieting, you're going to get in some kind of disordered behavior with your food in your body. It's part of it. But anyways, we were sitting down one night and I watched my client weigh her food 5 times before she would put it in her mouth. And it just started, we started talking about our disordered eating, our disordered relationship with our body. And I realized that it didn't matter if someone was overweight or if they were like we were at the time, stage lean, muscles popping everywhere. If you still think negative at 50 pounds overweight about yourself, you're still going to think negative even when you get to that goal weight. It has nothing to do with the weight. It has to deal with self-love. It has to deal with accepting yourself. And when you listen, no one is going to lose weight. Yeah, you can force yourself to lose weight, stay on track, be very consistent. But at the end of the day, if you don't change the way you feel about yourself and start from a loving place, none of that is going to be a long-term thing. You're going to gain that weight right back once you stop dieting. It's all about little shifts in our mindset and our beliefs that we have to change. And so, anyways, we were all sitting around the table that night talking about our relationship with food and our bodies. And at that point, that's when I discovered that I wasn't teaching people to love themselves anymore. I wasn't actually teaching people to really be more confident. They might be in that short-term time frame when they're losing weight, but at the end of the day, they have no more confidence in themselves than when they started. And that's when I fell out of love with it. And that was kind of the major shift for me that was going on in my life.
I love how you say that. Look, disorder is a part of it, and man, it just gives me kind of chills thinking that, because I'm sure people watched you do this, and they probably thought that like, hey, like I gotta say something to her, or something like that. And then here you are watching somebody else weigh their food 5 times, just being so anxious about it, not really, you could argue, not living their truest best self. Do you think that disorder is a part of it because you sort of become this false identity and you chase something that's just like completely not you? Is that the disorder?
We all have a natural set point in our body. Like if you haven't dieted in your life, you've probably noticed this. Like my natural set point is around 120 to 130 pounds. Like if I don't diet at all and I just eat whatever it is that I want, I'm like still mindful about things, that's the set point range that I'm going to be in. But when I'm trying to diet, well, it's a lot harder for me to get down to that 115, 110, 100 mark. I used to want to be 97 pounds once when I stepped on stage. But it's really hard for us to get past that point because it's not our natural body's set point. And so that's when the disorder kind of comes in, because you're being obsessive, you're being compulsive, and you're not really feeding and nourishing your body in the way that it needs. And you do that long term, or you do what other people do, what most people do, 90% of people, I would say, is you go through this cycle. You lose weight, you stop dieting, you gain weight, you hate yourself, and then you just keep doing this repetitive cycle. So that's really where that disorder comes in. And it's also there the whole time, because then you go off the diet, you're like, I deserve to eat all these foods, I've been working really hard, and then you gain the weight back and you're like, I hate myself, what's wrong with me? And then that negative self-talk comes back in. And this is really the biggest reason that it's a disorder, is because most people cannot keep a positive mindset. They are completely negative throughout the whole thing. I remember being 100 pounds, looking at myself in the mirror, being like, you're going to be the fat girl on stage. These were the words that were going through my head. And it's just mind blowing now that I'm out of this and I'm not so obsessed with my body image anymore. It opened up a whole new world for me. It allowed me more time to focus on different areas of my life. And I'm so grateful that I got to go through the experience, though, because you do learn a lot about dedication. And there's a fine line between dedication and disorder.
Yeah. And I mean, you went all in. I mean, you don't, 100 pounds, you want to weigh three less pounds on the fat girl. Like, my goodness. I mean, of course you hear yourself say that now, you can kind of laugh, but look, you wanted your pro card, I want my pro card, I want to do this. To somebody that's in that type of situation, what is healthy? What is the line? And you're talking about self-love. If somebody is like, wants to perform and wants to be in that realm, I know you're not coaching in this anymore, but I guess if you were to give somebody advice, if somebody was like, they're going like, hey, I'm going for my pro card, is there any way to do it and be healthy without falling into a disorder?
So once I went and got my education and got certified in eating psychology, the way to be healthy about it is, first and foremost, why do you want to lose the weight? And getting clear on that, because a lot of the times for people, it's, I'm going through a divorce right now and I just need something to keep my mind, straight. Or, talking backstage to different girls there, it's, they were drinking too much all of a sudden. And so they wanted to completely cut that out of their life. Or, they're depressed right now, and this is the only thing that they feel they can control in their life. And that, once we get down to that reasoning on why exactly you want to achieve this, well, then we can start the healing process. For example, if the reason you want to lose weight so bad is because your current relationship is a disaster and you don't know if you're going to get a divorce or what have you, well, now instead of us focusing everything on losing that weight, well, now it's, how can we better show up in that relationship? What's missing? How can we better honor ourselves, create specific boundaries, but move forward with that? Because a lot of the times, once you heal the bigger reason for it, you heal everything. And the same thing goes with people that find themselves, overeating or binging. Well, a lot of the times they're doing that because they're stressed. Okay, well, what are you stressed about? If we figure out that you're stressed about work, okay, how can we establish some boundaries so there's a cutoff point? And how can we make it less stressful? And again, once we fix that, we tend to fix everything else.
I really love that, Megan, because that's, I think, advice every loan officer, real estate agent, financial planner, CPA, those have. We all need to hear this, because it's not just about, like, you can take your mind away from things and have like healthy addictions. Like, I'm going to work out, I'm going to binge on this one podcast or whatever it is. These are healthy things. However, if you're building up this false facade of, of this disorder, or you're supporting something that is actually, a negative piece of your life, like drinking, smoking, doing drugs, that type of stuff, or not eating, or whatever it is, you're not dealing with the actual problem. And I think that's really fire advice. You have to figure out what your why is, why do you want to lose the weight? And I'm guessing, do a lot of people just end up telling you, like, here, you mentioned divorce, mentioned this, like, these are fake whys, right? I mean, like that's not, like, fix that. You shouldn't be losing all this weight because of whatever problem it is.
Yeah, that's definitely the first step. And then, once we address what that main concern is and establish, how to progress forward in fixing that solution, then the other thing that I love to teach people now that, I've healed myself through this journey. I was anorexic back in high school, and I used, we talk about creating these healthy behaviors that aren't so healthy. Well, that's what bodybuilding was to me, that it was a way for me to control that looked healthier to everyone on the outside. But to me, it was still how I can control my weight and everything else like that. But one thing that also really helped myself heal is, one, I got down to that, why exactly do I feel that way? How can I, work on fixing that? But then also I completely got rid of my scale. I haven't weighed myself in years now. I also got rid of my food scale. And for a while, it was completely terrifying because I was like, I'm putting no stipulations on food or exercise. If I don't want to work out, I'm not going to work out. It's only if I want to move my body. Because again, we're looking at long-term sustainability here. So for 8 months, my only exercise was a walk outside. And aside from that, I was eating foods that were forbidden to me. I would never put butter on toast. I would never put butter on anything because in my mind, I was like, 1 tablespoon, that's 9 grams of fat. That's like almost 100 calories right there. Like, no, I can just bypass that. So I started allowing myself to eat all these foods that I called forbidden foods. And I overate for a while. It was like every meal, it was like, oh man, I've never been able to eat like this. I would eat everything. I'd go to the movies, I'd get candy, I'd get popcorn, I'd get all of it. But then after a while, then it started to kind of even out. And then all of a sudden, it opened up a new world for me. Instead of it being what food is low calorie that I can pick from, it turned into, okay, how does this food make me feel? And so I always encourage people to explore how food makes them feel. And it's not a bad idea to log your food for a while. It's not something that I think you need to do forever in your life, but you can really gain some really great insight on how food makes you feel once you start logging your food. And it's also important that, we get enough things like protein so that we can build our muscles and sustain, especially when you're in a caloric deficit. You want to be getting enough protein or it's just going to waste your muscle mass. And that's not what we're trying to get rid of here. So pay attention to how foods make you feel and write about it. And you'll start to learn things. For example, I know that dairy does not make me feel good. Do I still eat it sometimes? Yes. But now I hold the power. I know how it makes me feel. And I know if I want to indulge in that or if I don't want to indulge in that. And you'll notice that when you base what you're going to eat off of how it makes you feel versus if it's going to help you lose weight, well, now without even trying, I'm, again, I'm at my natural set point here and I feel great in my body. And so that's really what I would encourage people to do.
So if a pizza makes you feel good, Megan Anderson says, eat it.
Yes. Yes.
Just go for it. Go do it. How does it make you feel? I really love that. That's just fire advice. I want to go back to mastermind. So you said that you literally just, you're showing up. You're kind of an event girl at a point, and I don't know if that's the proper term or what you'd call it. Was it 2015 by chance?
Probably about right. I don't know.
Was Tony Robbins there?
No, I think it was George Bush.
Okay, that was 2015 was George Bush. 16 was what? My goodness. Anyway, Barry was at both of them. So, so you go there. What are you doing? And I guess I'm trying to envision this because I would say connection wise, like that's your time. Like you are making these major connections. What did you go there for? Like, what were you actually doing? Was it something to do with bodybuilding or was it just events?
And it was a pretty girl job, in Vegas, a pretty girl job. That's what I like to call it. Not talking high of myself here. It's just, one of those jobs you laugh at. I was working a booth, a coaching company booth, and my main goal was, to get people to come over to the booth. So Barry came up, introduced himself. Everyone came up, introduced themselves. I fulfilled my job duty that day. Say that.
Do you remember the first time you met Barry? Because I do. He's just, I want to hear your words about it. Do you actually remember it?
I do. So I walk in the door to Mastermind, right away when you walk in, they have all the booths set up. I'm walking in and Barry's standing there in his red Angelo Galasso suit jacket. It is red. It looks so amazing on him. So anyways, Barry's there in this sparkly suit jacket, watch, the whole thing, head to toe, perfect. And he introduces himself and says, "Hey, I'm about to speak on stage. You should come listen to me speak." And I said, "I'm working this booth, yada, yada." So he comes over, gets the okay for me to leave the booth to go watch him. And then he escorts me down to the front row and sits me down. And I listened to him speak. And then Dan and John, who was also with us back in the day, they came up later, introduced themselves. And Barry and I kept talking after that event because he wanted me to come do events for them. And then the whole thing went down in Vegas. My roommate was crazy. I left. I took a girl's thing off of Craigslist. Turns out she wasn't paying her rent. I had to be evicted and out of there within 24 hours. So I call Barry. I'm like, "I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" And then I went out to New Jersey. So
that is
time events.
That is just nuts. And I love how Barry just totally took you and said, "All right, you're coming with me." And he's just, he's talks about a lot in his book as being magnetic and you're just like attractive people. But I tell you what, when you shake that man's hand, he looks you straight in the eye, 100% sincerity. And like, I remember he says, "How are you, brother? Thanks for coming in." And he's just like bright, shining, like energy. He's just he really is such a great man. And to someone he doesn't know either. You know what I mean? It's not just like you hit record and then it's
always interesting when I travel with him because he makes friends with everybody. It doesn't matter if you're the person cleaning the bathroom, if you're working behind the front desk. Barry treats everyone so genuine and just always has such a big heart. And I can't even tell you the countless stories that I've heard from people, just of Barry inspiring them to do more and be more in their life. And I mean, I would not be where I am today without that man being in my life. So completely agree with the rest of them.
Yeah, for sure. And to move on with your story, because this is about you. So you start at MBS Highway and you're making sales. So is sales basically like, I guess, calling loan officers and pitching MBS Highway? Walk me through your start of the job and your transition into what you're doing today.
So I started off with just sales, which means you get a list of cold leads, whether these are expired people that took a trial or whatever. Give them a call, see if they want to try MBS Highway out again. And then, you ultimately try and set up a demo to walk them through the platform and sell them. And that's where I started off. And, I wanted to always do more with our marketing because we didn't have a marketing department. I didn't really want to be in sales the whole time, even though I still do sales. I'm still straddling a lot of different positions, but it was just at that time that I noticed all these other things that we could be doing. And I thank God too, that I was in a small company like MBS Highway where I could just set out and do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And there's also, a lesson in this as well as, definitely you have to feel out your company. Do you have the ability to take extra initiative or whatever? But it's so important that we take initiative because if I didn't take initiative and start that Facebook group or, start speaking with things like social media and video, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But it all started with taking that initiative.
So I want to stay there for a second. Because look, there's a lot of people that are scared of that and scared of really coming out of their comfort zone. For instance, doing a podcast. Oh my God, how do you do that? And like, I'm sure it's a question that you regularly ask, like, how did you get to this point? Does it literally just start with that initial just step out? I'm going to start a Facebook group and then build on it from there? Or was it lots of different ways that you're going in different initiatives, lots of different, like, I failed at this, but this is working. How did you evolve? What was it? Was it one of the two of those or something different?
Yeah, you definitely stumble before you actually achieve things. The Facebook group, though, I mean, that was great. That thing just took off. It didn't matter. We had, kind of this set database of large individuals. They could come in, make a group that was going to be active right away. So that part was easy. I definitely failed a few times though with, I'm not a graphic designer. So when we first started and I first started doing the Instagram, like it has improved so much since the beginning. But just don't be afraid to take initiative, because it really is going to help you find out where your passion is and where your purpose is and how you can help people.
Absolutely. And I think here, you guys do a fantastic job. At least now, at least now I definitely see the work that you're doing. Talk about Behind the Breakthrough, your podcast, why you started it, and really why you do it.
Yeah, so Behind the Breakthrough is definitely a passion project. One thing that I really still kind of miss, and I am having more of it kind of involved in my life with the people that I surround myself by, but one thing that I really missed is when I was coaching individuals, they were always very vulnerable with me. They would share these sob stories, they would open up, they would share their story, we would heal together. And I really missed that when I came into the mortgage space, because it's very much tactical, do this, achieve this, reach this, business, business, business. And so I really wanted to involve those deeper conversations in my life again, because those fill me up. And so I started the podcast. It actually all started at Amplify. I was thinking about doing a podcast, but I didn't know what to call it. So Renee and I were sitting there waiting to go to the airport. And I'm like, I just don't know what I should call my podcast. And he's like, okay, well, what do you want it to be about? And I was like, well, I want to have these deeper conversations. Every podcast I listen to is like, do this, achieve this. People did this on marketing, yada, yada, yada. But I want it to be about the struggle, because ultimately, in order for us to reach success, we have to go through a struggle. And I personally know from my own bodybuilding journey and my clients' journeys as well, that sharing your story is so powerful. And it's not sharing the successes, it's sharing all the shit that you had to go through to get there. And so then we came up with the name. Renee actually came up with the name for the podcast. So
Get out
he
of
came
here.
up with the name.
Really?
And no, he did. Yeah, he came up with the name.
That man, he is something else.
Yeah, that was that. And the podcast has been really fun. It's been fun just to have more conversations like that in my life. And I've learned so much from the guests that come on. So really appreciative of it.
Yeah, it's like therapy is the way that I call it. And also a podcast is fun. I mean, this is like you talk about like filling yourself up. Like me just hearing your conversation just fills me up, hearing your struggle. I firmly agree with that. I can mirror everything you just said. I learned something with it. And the fact that Renee helped you name it, he literally misspelled my name on my Amplify certificate. And it was Jimi. And he said, yeah, I saw it spelled here somewhere. And that literally became my new name. Like literally,
I love it.
Isn't that nuts though? That man is, that's why I'm just laughing at you, because like this man just has such an impact on so many people's lives that it's just like, I pretty much pitch Amplify pretty much every podcast, but it's just because it's just so good. It's so real. And was Phil Treadwell at your Amplify?
He was, yeah.
You talked to that guy for 10 minutes, and I'm sorry, but you're starting a podcast. You just are. And that was mine.
The Industry Syndicate is the one behind all my podcasts too. So that made the podcast really easy, because I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And they were like, you just have to interview people. And I was like, I can do that.
Sounds good. We got it. All right. Well, I want to be super respectful of your time, Megan. And there's a few questions that I ask everybody. that I wanna ask you.
Okay.
So the first one is this: do you feel like you ever had a big break?
Do I ever feel like what? I've had a big break?
I love it. Barry was like, "What? What did you say?" He said the same exact thing. Do you feel like you ever had a big break, like a big break? Like, hey, I had this big break, and this was it.
Speaking at Mastermind a few years ago was a big break for me because it was the largest group of people that I've spoken to in front of. And from there, it really just solidified who I am in this space. And it's really, I feel like when people started to take notice of who I am, and that's when I kind of shifted to really building my brand.
That's awesome. How many people did you speak in front of?
There was a little over 1,000 in that room. So
Yeah, and I mean, all the who's who of mortgage too.
yeah.
That's certainly pretty solid. All right, next question. If you were to do it all over again, Megan, what would you change?
Hmm. That's a hard question because while I go back and I look at those hard times and everything that I went through and the bad decisions, they ultimately led me to where I am. And they didn't really make sense back in the day, but now they do. And so if I think about going back and doing them any differently, I don't know if I'd be where I am today. So I'm going to have to say that I wouldn't change anything.
I love it. That's just solid. I love everybody's answer to that question. And yeah, you don't disappoint, Megan, for sure. Was there ever a time, Megan, you thought about giving up?
Oh, yeah. All the time. Well, not all the time, but when I was shifting from my bodybuilding stuff into MBS Highway, that felt like I was giving up and I wanted to give up. But I didn't. I kept going. And when I first started the podcast, I, I got burnt out for a while because in the beginning I filmed like 10 episodes all at once and then I didn't have anyone for a while. And then I had to get back into it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just stop doing this. But
Boy, that's just real. I mean, I can certainly relate.
The cycle of starting a podcast.
I know it really is kind of nuts. Just to go back on this, did you feel like you were giving up on bodybuilding and that type of thing? And how'd that actually feel? Because I mean, you're doing something completely different. You're moving this other way, but you still felt that a little bit of failure with it.
It felt like I lost my identity. I mean, I had everything wrapped up in that. My friend choices, my work, um, everything was wrapped up in the way that I would look and the way that I would present myself and how I would perform. And so, oh man, I thought I was losing my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. And that took a while to crawl out of, but your identity's in there and trust me, you might not feel it right now, but you always know who you are and who you have been. It cycles of life.
What made you break through? What was that final? I'm using your word a lot, but what actually did it for you? So like, I mean, you make the change. You're in New Jersey, but you're probably still holding on to it. What was your realization? What was your just like, okay, that's the old me, and that me is dead. This is the new Megan. What did you have a pivotal moment like that, or what was it like for you?
I just I had the negative, toxic belief that if I didn't look a certain way, I wouldn't be able to have the life that I want. And I had to shift that belief. I knew that it wasn't really reality and it was painful to live in that mindset every single day. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And I didn't want to like starve myself every day and feel bad if I didn't go do cardio and have to go do extra cardio if I ate a donut or something. I just knew I couldn't live my life that way anymore. And so I knew that I had to do some healing and I wasn't sure how to do it, but I just knew I couldn't be like that anymore.
Did you just recreate yourself step by step? Or was it like, did you attach yourself to something new? And you mentioned that, like, look, I always knew who the real me was. I just wasn't letting it shine. What made you find that? I guess what?
Well, for a while, I thought that my two worlds had to be completely opposite, that, hey, I'm leaving this behind. This is completely gone forever. But now that I'm where I'm at today, it's all a part of me and it's all made me who I am. And it's, I think that that has been helpful, is just not shunning it away. Is like, I'm not going to look at that part of my life anymore, but realizing that it's all encompassing and it's all part of my story. And, I thought that helping people feel more confident and comfortable with themselves, that's always been my passion. But for some reason, I always attached it to what I was doing before. And I didn't realize that it could be where I'm at over here. And it was just, going through being depressed, going through all of these things, that I discovered, oh, it's always been there. It looks a little different now.
I really love that. I think a lot of people can relate to that, and that's fire. All right, so the final question, Megan, and to set it up, there's a young Megan out there, and maybe they're, getting started in, bodybuilding. Maybe they're in it. Maybe they're, weighing their food 5 times. Maybe they're in Vegas. They're just breaking up. Maybe they're in New Jersey, starting over and, questioning if this is all worth it. What advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
You do not have to be perfect. You just have to take daily steps, day by day, to work to achieving what it is that you want. And do not be fooled. Your self-worth has nothing to do with the way that you look.
Fire, Megan. I don't even want to add to that. That's just period. That's fire.
Drop.
All right. Yeah, mic drop. I mean, but for real though, that's powerful. All right. I really want to, thank our audience for listening. I especially want to thank, Megan for coming on. And Megan, if there was someone that, wanted to reach out to connect, what would be the best way for them to do so?
You guys can just text Megan, MEGAN, to 33777. And you can also follow me on Instagram at I am Megan Anderson.
Well, and you're not going to be, there's no lack of entertainment on Megan's Instagram. She always has something fun and exciting going on. And, I love following you on social. So, all right. Thanks, Megan. And all right, this has been the Get It Done podcast. If you like what you've heard today, tell a friend, write us a 5-star review. All those things make a huge difference in helping us reach more people. Once again, I am Jimi Ryan. Thanks so much for listening. Many more stories on the way.